Okay. Nah, this looks stupid. That's better. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's review on Joker, the new film directed by Todd Phillips, starring Joaquin Phoenix. I know this movie has been out for a long time, and I'm very late in the game, but I finally saw it, so now I finally had the chance to talk to you about it. So this is an original origin story on probably the most iconic comic book villain of all time, the Joker. Now, we've seen the Joker being portrayed many times before. In Tim Burton's Batman, we see him portrayed by Jack Nicholson as this gangster. In Christopher Nolan's film The Dark Knight, we see the Joker being portrayed as a terrorist. And this one's a little different. In this adaptation, he is portrayed by Joaquin Phoenix as a man named Arthur Fleck, who works as a clown for hire and also dreams of one day becoming a stand-up comedian. This film does a great job showing how a person becomes a product of their environment. A villain doesn't just become a villain overnight, and sometimes it doesn't just take one bad day, like it did in Alan Moore's The Killing Joke. In Arthur Fleck's case, it's a lifelong struggle. Arthur Fleck suffers from mental illness, and the world hasn't been kind to him for it. Ever since he was a kid, he has struggled with mental and physical abuse. Even to his adulthood, he is picked on by kids. He is lonely, he is depressed, he is anxious, and he's living with his mother in poverty, in a city that's riddled in crime, pollution, and corruption. And the system fails him miserably in getting him the help that he needs to cope with his issues. This film did a great job in showing how all of these factors can negatively impact a person struggling with mental illness. Joaquin Phoenix gives the performance of his career. I liked him in Walk the Line, but this tops it. He portrays mental illness in such a realistic way. His mental and physical transformation is astounding in the movie. Also, I'd like to point out one thing that Joaquin Phoenix does that distinguishes himself is the laughter. I love how they made the Joker's laugh become a neurological disorder, because we see Joaquin Phoenix laugh, but he's laughing involuntarily. It's so sad, and yet it's so menacing. We're confused as to how we're supposed to feel about this. In another scene, Joaquin Phoenix is laughing uncontrollably on a bus, and a mom is like staring at him, like, what the hell? And even after she finds out about his disorder, she's like, God, I'm supposed to feel sorry for you, but this is so weird. It's so realistic. And what's surprising is that we know he's a villain, and we know in the end he's gonna become this psychopathic killer with no empathy towards humanity. And yet, the audience can still feel empathy for this character. Yes, he commits a lot of horrendous crimes. And even though he does all these bad things to all these innocent people, we still wish that it hadn't gone that way. This film shows what happens when we fail to listen, what happens when we fail to communicate with other people, what happens when we can't accept people for who they are. And sometimes we don't realize it, but we are the culprits of all the bad things that happen. This is a spoiler-free review, but I want to talk about one scene in the movie. In one scene, Arthur is getting help from a therapist, like one of these poor man's insurance healthcare providers. In this scene, while Arthur is trying to share all the negative thoughts that he has, the therapist is more focused on the fact that she's going to be laid off due to, the politicians of Gotham City cutting the funding to mental health care. She's focused on her and not on him. And that's the problem. That was probably my favorite scene out of the whole movie, because it exemplifies how sometimes people can get wrapped up in their own problems that they fail to listen to other people. As a result, people are more divided. They care less about one another. They care less about the world around them. This film was scary realistic in that aspect. This film was extremely well crafted. Great cinematography, a great score, and the supporting cast is great all around. Joaquin Phoenix is the cream of the crop, but this film had a great supporting cast. From Arthur's mother to the file clerk in Arkham Asylum. They're great. Every actor gets to shine in this film. And that's what I was so grateful to Todd Phillips and his direction. Every character mattered, and I appreciated this film a lot. This film was a bit unsettling. It is probably the darkest version of the Joker you will ever see, and it is violent. And I know there has been a controversy about, people going to see the Joker. They're afraid that this movie is going to instill violence in people. I can see why they would think that. I mean, it is a very violent movie, but honestly, I've seen more violent movies than this. The Departed was more violent than this. Speaking of The Departed, I know that this film has taken a lot of inspiration from other Scorsese films like Taxi Driver. Yeah, I could totally see that. Also, I did see a little bit of the French Connection in there. Just a little. I know a lot of people are bothered by that. It wasn't really a problem to me because honestly, a lot of films do that. Every director, derives some inspiration from other movies. I mean, just look at The Shape of Water or The Artist. A lot of stuff that's been done in other films were put into those films. So this is nothing different, really. Now, as to the negatives, this movie is kind of slow-paced, but in the end, I think it actually helps it along because the movie just shows how a person needs to suffer more and more and more and more and more until finally he feels like he has nothing to live for anymore. Because this movie is set in the Joker's mind. This is how he sees the world. Just nothing but negativity until finally he decides to take matters into his own hands. This was a really good movie. And I'm glad that it's not trying to be part of this cinematic universe like Marvel did. It's not so much of a comic book movie. It's more of a character study about the psychology of a psychopath who just happens to be a villain in Batman. And I'm going to give it an A. So, that's my review. Thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. And remember, that's... Yeah, I'm totally gonna break out in the morning.